Director Frega.
Here.
Director Fuentes.
Here.
Director Hobson.
Here.
Director Lewis.
Here.
Director McAllis.
Here.
Director Melvin.
Here.
Director Pang.
Here.
Director Ross.
Here.
Director Totten.
Here.
Director Troiani.
Here.
Director Troiani is participating via phone and has completed the necessary paperwork. Chairman Dillard.
Here.
15 present and 1 absent.
Great. We have more than a quorum. I want to remind everyone that last month the RTA began providing a live audio cast of our committee and board meetings, and RTA stakeholders, especially the residents and transit riders of the region, can now listen to our public meetings and view the associated agendas over the internet. The webcast can be accessed by logging on to rtachicago.org from any smartphone, tablet, laptop, or desk computer, and clicking the button that says RTA Webcast or RTA Meeting Webcast. We're proud to provide this service moving forward to offer better transparency to our riders and to the public and the taxpayers of the region, and allow those who may not be able to make it to our meetings physically to be able to hear the business that's conducted by this board. In conjunction, I want to remind you before Audrey does to turn on and off the speak light on your microphone so your voice can be clicked up or heard perfectly for the audio cast and the record. Otherwise, please keep your microphones off. So let's begin, as we always do at the real meeting or regular meeting, with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, when I say real meeting, I mean the full board meeting. Although, as always, board members on the RTA generally attend the committee hearings, which I just think is, I was coming from the legislature. I was pleasantly surprised to see how good and conscientious the members of this board are by attending every committee meeting. Happy New Year, everybody. We're off to a good start. I believe we had a good end of the year. I was the co-chair of the very happily appointed by Governor Rauner to serve as the co-chair of his Infrastructure Transition Committee, where the staff provided excellent input for that committee, and we used that big number, Director Hobson, that with a little caveat from me for the committee members who we're staring at some staggering numbers, including what the state of Illinois needs for roads and bridges. Although I always tell the road builders our buses run on roads, and we're all in this together in terms of infrastructure. I do want to point out, since the last meeting, where we saluted our fellow board member and the state comptroller, Judy Bartopinka, another giant of this board, a former member, someone who had a direct hand in formulating the laws that operate mass transit in the region. Joe Texon passed away. I will get you, the Tribune did a very nice half-page story on him. In fact, I'll pass it around. Actually, this one's from the Daily Law Bulletin, but the Tribune had a nice tribute to him as well. But Joe, I happen to know Joe, not on transit matters, but just as a very well respected lawyer in the Chicago metropolitan community. But let the record reflect that we acknowledge the passing of this fine gentleman and somebody who has contributed greatly to the transportation and infrastructure of this region. With that, on item number 3, can we have approval of the minutes from the board meeting held on December 17th, 2003? Anybody have any questions first? If not,
Can we make that 2014?
Yes, I will make it 2014. It's on here. It's 2014. If not, Director Totten moves that we approve the minutes, seconded by Director Friga. Let's take the roll on this one, so we'll have an attendance roll call.
All righty. Director Buchanan.
Here.
Director Colson.
Aye.
Director DeWitt.
Aye.
Director Durrani.
Aye.
Director Frega.
Aye.
Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Hobson.
Aye.
Director Lewis.
Aye.
Director McGallis.
Aye.
Director Melvin.
Aye.
Director Pang.
Aye.
Director Ross.
Aye.
Director Totten.
Aye.
Director Troyani.
Aye.
Chairman Dillard.
Aye.
15 ayes and 1 absent.
I love it. I've been there in meetings on the phone, and I know that Director Trione hits the mute button so we don't have background noise. So I appreciate that, Doug, very much. That's how I conduct it too. So thank you. Thanks, Doug. This is the item 4 is the public comment segment of the meeting, and we today do have 2 speakers who are scheduled to appear. First, we have Garland Armstrong. Garland, if you approach the podium and state your name and who you represent, and importantly, the area where you live, so we kind of have a feel for where your residence is. I remind you by our rules, you're limited to 3 minutes for your comments, and we thank you for being here this morning.
Happy New Year to you, Chairman Deal and Board Directors. I'm Garland Armstrong, former CTA and Metro ADA Advisory Committee member, and also Pay Chicago ADA Advisory Committee member, and I also live in Elmwood Park, Illinois. My concern is this month, January 3rd, I was coming from Lombard in Oak Park waiting for the 90 bus, and this young black teenager tried to ask me to swipe my free ride so he can get on the CTA bus, and he looked at me thinking I was dumb or weird. And I think the slogan is for this year is don't even think about it, because there are some young teenagers is going to try to go around, try to take advantage of the people who have the ADA paratransit reduced fare and the free rides, because so they can get on there without paying their fares. So I think this year you should be like a sharks on them to make sure that they will never, ever think about going through this again, because I don't know what will be happening in the new year. So with me coming up here to tell you firsthand, I think you should be on the boat for 2015 to make sure that we should be like sharks on them so they will never, ever try to do it again to us. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Garland. I will tell you, and we are on it, and I give full credit to the CTA. November or December, Forrest Claypool, the president of the CTA, and I had a press conference together using their security forces. And on a table, Garland, were probably 1,000 cards that were confiscated in a short period of time from abuse. And I know that President Claypool and the CTA, but all our service boards are looking at the abuse of these privileges that are given, and it's important to the riders who pay the full fare that people who are supposed to pay don't. So they're on it, but we will keep them on it. So thank you so much, Garland.
Thank you very much.
Happy New Year, sir. Thank you.
You too.
Next, we have David May. If Mr. May would come on up. Thank you, sir, for being here. Again, tell us who you represent and where you live.
My name's Dave May. I represent myself. I live in LaGrange, excuse me, Cook County. I'm here to recommend that you support proposed changes to the state sales tax that would increase RTA revenue. For years, various politicians, civic organizations, and public policy groups have urged the General Assembly to extend the sales tax to numerous retail services. Among those supporting this concept is our new governor, Bruce Rauner. Depending on which services are taxed, the amount of revenue flowing to RTA and then via RTA to the 3 operating agencies would vary substantially, from as little as $30 million to as much as $300 million per year. This money could make a real difference in the 3 transit agencies' state of good repair and capital projects backlogs. And unlike the sales tax on goods, which does not keep up with inflation, the service tax should grow enough to keep pace with costs. I urge you to lead the CTA, Metra, and PACE in a collaborative endeavor to show our legislators and the public the value and benefits of this expanded revenue stream to the economic vitality, environmental prudence, and quality of life in northeastern Illinois. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments. And yes, we are very much watching what the governor proposes on everything in Springfield, but have our eye on what he has proposed with respect to broadening of the sales tax base. And I know that a number of groups in Illinois will chime in as well. But and as Director McGallis pointed out, we need a plan. And if the sales tax broadening is a way to assist the riders of and taxpayers of the RTA, we will be all over it. But thank you, and you may see, we may want to have you do a testimonial for us, depending upon where this all pans out this spring. So thank you, David, very much for being here. Next is item 5, and that's the Executive Director's Report. Director Redden.
I guess
you are Executive
I thought I was
Director Redden.
Yes,
Oh.
I thought I was being timed. I had 1 minute, 30 seconds. Happy New Year. No, but seriously, I actually am asking your indulgence for a few minutes to sort of do a combined presentation on what I was going to do in the December abridged meeting and what I was planning to do at this meeting. So a little slightly expanded ED report to share with you some of the accomplishments of 2014, but also a quick outlook on the way we see us as an organization in 2015. But before I actually do that, I'll just start with a couple of the usual items that we always touch on, and that is how much the state actually owes us. And as of right now, it's $207 million. So we keep that running tab going and continue our discussions with Springfield. On the Washington update front, the 113th Congress ended with basically just passing the must-pass legislation. There was an omnibus bill, so there was a small bright light within that, and that was CTA getting $120 million in federal funding for core capacity, which was a good thing, but again, a drop in the bucket towards some of our needs, as we've talked about at length this morning. But I think that the incoming Congress is very important to us because this year represents, again, the end of the short extended MAP 21 federal legislation for transportation, and the linked expiration of the Highway Trust Fund revenue allocated towards transit. So there's a big agenda ahead for us and the transit and transportation across the country. So we'll continue on that effort towards that refocus. I think we also sort of touched on this earlier about with the lowering gas prices presents an opportunity, and as we have actually heard over the last couple of weeks, several high-profile elected officials on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, have come forward and said they would be interested in entertaining actually an increase in the gas tax with this unprecedented low gas prices. Senators Hatch and Inhofe, Corker, and then also on the home front, Senator Durbin have come forward and said that there's some growing bipartisan support for that. And transportation historically has been a bipartisan issue, and we're hoping that we can actually move forward. The President's State of the Union address did touch on some of that as well. We'll continue to also work on the transit benefit and the parity in transit benefit to keep it on par with parking. They did approve it in the bill last year, but essentially that expired at the end of last year. So we're sort of back to square one. The advantage, though, of keeping it in there, it's still on the table. If we'd sort of lost that opportunity, even though it didn't effectively have any impact for anybody, it would have been worse if we were starting from it not even being in existence. On the government affairs side, to that end, on our federal initiatives, we'll continue to spearhead both letter writing and potential visits for early this year. So Chairman Dillard, clear your calendar, will probably be heading to DC again, and our continued discussion with our delegation and other elected officials across the country in partnership with our coalition to really make sure that the public transit issues are first and foremost in front of mind for everybody. The Public Transportation Caucus, which is the congressional caucus, is likely to have an event early this year, and again lining up to support that and help them plan that agenda as they talk about federal funding for the next transportation bill. We continue to work with our coalition. The membership of the coalition is growing. We actually got some good participation and sign up from the Georgia area, including their Atlanta Regional Commission and their Community Improvement District around that area, as well as the city of Rome and Athens joining us in the coalition efforts. So we continue again to work on sort of spreading the message and having all of us talking off the same song sheet as we move forward. So on to sort of a quick look at what we have accomplished in the last year. I'm going to just quickly run through by department here at the agency to sort of give you a snapshot at what we have done. And the Finance and Performance Management team, we hear regularly from that group at our Finance Committee meetings, and as you know, is led by B. Raina Hickey. But in 2014 specifically, we really accomplished, I think, a very successful, smooth budget process, getting everything approved ahead of deadline and statutory requirements, as well as some very successful and good progress on some of our performance management reporting. And you see periodic reports from that group coming out. And I think next month you'll see an update in that area as well. The Treasury Group also issued $100 million in capital bonds. We've talked about that. The Controllers Group completed our consolidated annual financial report and received a 2013 award for that. We also implemented internally some paperless processes to increase efficiencies in both our AP and our payroll groups. This is some of the invisible stuff that we work on that most of you don't see and isn't necessarily interesting in the public space, but I think it's important to note our efficiencies that we continue to work on. In the Programming, Oversight and Compliance Group, the Asset Condition Assessment Report that you heard about today, continue to work in there. They continue to work on the project management, oversight, and value engineering work on many of those capital projects. We facilitated 4 rail safety oversight audits for the CTA. I know that seems crazy that we did 4, but there's federal, there's our local, our state requirements, et cetera. So there's been quite a bit of work in that space. We continue to work on administering the capital bond program in the transit space for IDOT. And that group also received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from GFOA again last year. In the planning and market development space, that is currently being headed up by Mark Pitstick, who is our acting director. The group really has focused on, as you know, developing the strategic plan. And last year they updated you on the progress that we continue to track as the progress we are making towards accomplishing our goals of the strategic plan. In the market development area, we had a big year in terms of social media. It was really our first real foray into that space. And our Facebook interest grew by more than 840% in 2014, gaining over 500 followers, and that continues to grow as we continue to push that. We also launched 2 marketing campaigns. You heard about the regional effort today, and you'd heard previously about a more localized effort that we launched with federal monies with DuPage County, and looking to make that potentially a model of a more focused effort, maybe to replicate that kind of concept around the country based on successes. In the regional coordination space, we continue to work with CTA, Metro, and PACE in the regional fair payment. We funded the service boards and issued over 500,000 Ventra permits to seniors and people with disabilities who are enrolled in our program, so transitioning from the old Magstripe cards to the Ventra cards. We created 2014 versions of the regional system map, which also updated a lot of information about the fare payments and fare tables. And we finally completed the interagency signage pilot program and are now moving into a more widespread interagency implementation of that across the region. Just one other thing that we, in the planning group, we're also continuing to work with CTA, PACE, IDOT, and CDOT, and the county highway departments to implement transit signal priority efforts. We were talking about sort of congestion and how bus ridership hopefully could look to improve, and creating some of those operational efficiencies across the region, and leveraging the federal grant that we got and implementing those projects around the region. Under the grant-funded programs, we also designated funds out for the JARC New Freedom and what we call 5310 monies across the region, awarded $7.1 million of those monies across the region. We also, in some of those monies also for the ICE program were to implement the Metra's automated external defibrillators. I can't say that fast. Across their system, AED devices. CTA also completed the installation of the automatic bay reading system for their indoor garages, which allows them to have a radio frequency that can better track their inventory, their rolling stock, their buses coming in and out, and better track in terms of maintenance and their efficiencies. PACE is also taking its first steps to deploy electronic displays of real-time bus information across their vast system across the region. The service boards also we worked closely with the service boards on the ICE program to revamp that process. As you know, the service boards now the ICE program is rolled up on the front end of the budget process. The funds are actually allocated in advance on a formula basis, and the funds are distributed according to that schedule, so they know what they're getting in advance as opposed to applying for a series of individual grants. It's rolled up into one big sort of omnibus or overarching grant. In the TOD space, we continued to work in 2014 on 13 projects, approved 15 new ones that will launch this year, totaling over 178 since we began the program. A couple of these projects include some work pictured here, Mundelein, top left, Orland Park, bottom right. We also facilitated an access to transit workshop, which really was in partnership with DePaul's Chadwick Institute, and engaged over 80 interested attendees across municipal and transit agency staff and planners to better learn about some of the successes that this planning efforts have had and how they could look to leverage and work with us in the future going forward towards more specific capital improvements focused on leveraging the resources and the system that we have out there. We'll continue to work with 4 communities that we completed planning studies in. They were Rolling Meadows, Glenelg, Palos Heights, and LaGrange on the access to transit improvements. We did a call for new projects for next year, this year, and we will look to actually, once we complete that work with them, leverage federal monies to actually implement those. This year's effort, we actually anticipate having we received a total of 30 applications, and we've selected 13 to move forward with, and you'll hear a little bit more about that as the year goes on. In the Mobility Services Department group, led by Michael Vanderkreek, this is the group that provides services to people with disabilities and seniors. In the ADA Paratransit Certification Program, we assisted 113,000 callers over the year. That resulted in the certification of 16,176 actual ADA certifications. But that does represent a 12% increase over 2013. In the travel training program that we do, we provided 190 travel training presentations throughout the region, but that reached 3,667 customers that are potential, people that we are training how to ride the mainline system as opposed to always defaulting to, say, some of the more expensive paratransit services out there. The program as a whole served over 3,800 individuals with disabilities and older adults, which represented serving more than an increase of 15% over the previous year. In the customer service space, we transitioned, as I mentioned, the 550,000 customers from the old Magstripes to the Ventra cards. We served 44,000 walk-in customers and completed 45,000 permit renewals for people with disabilities and 67,000 for senior free ride cards. The Travel Information Centre, okay, that wasn't good. Sorry. Travel Information Centre, okay. We handled more than 3 million calls. We transitioned to a new vendor, and during the year we actually readjusted our service. At the end of this past year, we adjusted our service hours to better reflect where the volume of calls come in, so we could redeploy the staffing within that contract to better serve those customers. We also know that we have seen an increase in more than 50% of our website traffic. In the long term, our goal is to drive people more from a customer direct phone call to a human being to more automated sort of self-service applications, and the increase in usage and traffic on the website for trip planning has showing that successes as well. In the Audit and Ethics Group, led by Michael Zumak, we did a service board risk assessment, and from that we developed a 5-year audit plan. We're completed the third year. Last year completed the third year of that plan. We have 3 audits that the oversight audits that we completed of the service boards. We also completed a cash and treasury audit, which was proactively prompted by a situation in Dixon where there was some embezzlement, and we wanted to make sure we didn't have any of those similar weaknesses in our system, and that came out good. We did an inventory management that initiated based on sort of seeing how the service boards had done some efforts in that space to make sure that we were up to snuff. And the revenue recognition audit was initiated due to the change in the fair collection with the Ventra system, so making sure that the revenues are being received as expected across all 3 service boards. Well, 2, but going forward it'll be 3. The board also requested that we that group coordinate a polar vortex review and briefing, and there were several other internal topics that looked at our expense reforms and other internal operational things. This group heads up our ethics efforts, and it is very important that they provided the important training to new employees and directors, a refresher training to all employees during the year. Their work also involves monitoring and dealing with the whistleblower hotline. Is staffed by that group, and they also are referred. They receive all the referrals from the OEIG for investigation, and then coordinate and manage those efforts. So there was quite a bit of work in that with that group as well. On the legal front, sales tax litigation, actually that came up a little bit earlier, so I'll be brief. But as you know, 2013 with the Supreme Court ruling, we've continued in that space to fight that fight, and as Nadine mentioned, we have seen a decrease in the number of agreements, and B also noted the increase in revenues that are coming in, some of which we think are attributed to some successes here. We also, the legal group headed by Nadine, also continues to joint purchase excess liability insurance to cover catastrophic losses in excess of $15 million. This is extremely difficult insurance to come by, and people don't necessarily want to underwrite that kind of policy because of the inherent risk of potential large-scale claims. And despite some of those issues, both nationally, we successfully renewed that coverage at flat rates when we saw the market actually trending up. So that was a good success, a good kudos for that group. The procurement group, which falls under Nadine's supervision, also processed 239 procurements and included 13 RFPs and 62 contract amendments. So they keep working on all of that. And we have had some conversation about the DBE and vendor contract compliance. And we conducted part 2 of our agency-wide procurement training to make sure staff were fully aware of all those requirements and steps, and improving our contract management administration. And we will continue actually some conversation with the board on how we can continue to advance and improve those efforts as well. In the human resources space, every manager completed their job description audit. That was led by our HR group to update, make sure everything was current and accurate and represented what people do. That also was a useful tool in completing a compensation study to address our compensation philosophy, our graded structure, and how to improve our overall structure. We will actually implement a new graded structure in 2015, really consolidate. We had a very large number of grades, and we've sort of consolidated that down to be a little more manageable and useful to us as a group. We also got board approval for our medical and dental benefits. We proposed a new way of a streamlined, efficient way of providing that enrollment. We moved to online enrollment for staff, and I think that created some efficiencies. We also moved it up in terms of schedules, so actually staff staff could better coordinate make better decisions and coordinate perhaps with spouses or others in making the best employment benefits decision for themselves and their families. HR also launched last year seminars, training classes, and information online, in-house stuff that we are doing. It also included legally required training, and we packaged the series and called it the RTA Advantage. It's just a developmental tool for staff here at the organisation. In the IT group, led by Arnold Crader, they worked a lot on what I call the invisible infrastructure, so upgrading a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. On the public-facing side, they also launched at the end of last year the website redesign and consolidation. If you haven't taken a look at the new website, I encourage you to do so. It is much easier to navigate, really with an eye on moving towards the more mobile users accessing websites. And so it's really been optimized to accessibility across mobile users, but also accessibility from an ADA perspective as well. They also, as you know, we're streaming board meetings and moved to audio presentations to make sure we were compliant with our state statute. In the government relations space, external communications includes both our local, state, and federal relations. Jeremy Lamarche is now heading that group, and Susan Massal is our communications director. So they have spent a lot of time working both in the sales tax sourcing issue, working with local mayors to help, for example, coordinate testimony with Department of Revenue as we've continued those conversations. Staff met with mayors and legislators on proposals to work on our community planning efforts with our councils of government also around the region. We have continued to be a powerful advocate for transit issues nationally and in Springfield, especially with our efforts on the Getting America to Work Coalition, and we will continue to do that work this current year. In the communications space, as I mentioned, Susan Massal is our director there, and they created an agency-wide brochure that really offers an overview of the organization. It's really a multi-purpose, useful document and complements several other communication pieces that really tells the story about what RTA does. The group also worked very closely with senior staff on press releases, letters to the editor, preparing media statements, etc. There was a lot of work around the polar vortex, but we continue to make sure that we tell the story about what we're doing and what our role is. We also have taken a more proactive role in pitching stories with the media and both trade and regular media over the past year. And they quarterback many of the presentations that the chairman makes, that I make around the region as well. So looking forward to 2015, what does the future hold? I think I essentially have three primary overarching goals, and I've touched on these before, but the first is really to continue the collaborative effort in our partnership with the service boards without yielding any of our territory or our agency's oversight responsibilities, but really pushing us to continue that collaboration, but with an eye on providing services to the 2 million people who ride our system on a regular basis. My second goal is the continued fight for capital funding. We talked about that, so I don't really need to labour that. But again, staff talking about how we can help ourselves, what is the actual game plan for advancing that more specifically even this year. We have a lot to sort of keep up with. We have scarce capital dollars. We are a world-class region, but we expend $64 a person, which is 21 per person on an annual basis, which is 21% less than our peer averages around the country. It's 1/4 than what New York spends towards its transit system. And we need to catch up and keep up if we want to keep up. And the third goal that I have is, as I mentioned, is continuing to look at efficiencies at the RTA. We have a very dedicated staff here, and we all need to make sure that what we're doing can ensure that our work benefits the riders first and foremost in the region. In terms of specifics, the bond issue that we did, and we'll do another bond issue this coming year. We will continue to support projects like the CTA's 95th Street Station, Metra's work to install the positive train control. Some of that bonding money will be going towards that, and Metra's, which is also being supported by Metra's fare increase. We also will be contributing to Pace's Bolingbrook Park and Ride expansion, which supports the Bus on Shoulder program. You may have seen something in the media, and we have been a strong partner and advocate for those services as well. We'll continue to focus on the rider experience. We also talked about the marketing plan, but we'll continue to work on the Union Station Master Plan with CDOT, Union Station, Amtrak, and all the other players. It's a very big group that has sort of a finger in that, but we'll keep working to make sure that we can most effectively provide support and hopefully even some monies towards some of those efforts. And as we begin the new year, I think it's important that we really look forward, and I look forward to your continued support and guidance as we progress. We will also be distributing a copy of the 2015 budget book, which gets into a lot more detail about the work plan, and you should be getting that fairly soon. It's just finished. Board briefing. We'll be sending it out in the next couple of weeks for you. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you for that excellent report, and thanks to the staff. You guys never cease to amaze me. Are there questions or suggestions for Leanne? Yes, Director Colson.
You mentioned your procurement training, and one of the issues, of course, the bidding process and the contracting process has to be fair and has to be immune from outside influence, and it has to be seen by the public. Does your procurement training touch on those kinds of issues?
Very much so. I mean, we conducted that training with the two ideas in mind, actually. One being to be an appropriate and good public steward of the public's money. That's number one. And number two, yes, keeping in mind that because we are government, we have an added responsibility when we procure goods and services to be both transparent and competitive in the way that we conduct our procurement. So, sometimes departments want to get things done. They want to be efficient. They want to be quick. And, sometimes the perception can be that procurement stands in the way of that, we drag things out and that it takes a little bit longer than people would like. And sometimes we have to explain to people why things have to take the time that they take and why we have to do things competitively, even if it's a small dollar amount and that kind of thing. So, we did drive that point.
We're lawyers. Our job is to slow things down.
That's supposed to be a secret between us.
And Leanne, you've been in office about 3 months. What is your staffing on government relations now? What does that look like? Are we going to get new lobbying contracts up in the spring, or what does the future portend there?
So traditionally, we have always had some support in the Springfield arena as well as at the federal level. I anticipate that we will continue to need that support, both in terms of the Springfield agenda could get actually quite aggressive if they move forward on capital funding, and we talked about sales tax, those kinds of things. So I think it's important that we are well represented and supported. That doesn't mean that, as you know, Chairman Dillard is very comfortable in Springfield and has a lot of connections. I think the opportunity we have now is Chairman Dillard will be very actively engaged also to supplement and really advance some of those efforts. And I intend to also be very much a face and actively engaged in Springfield. Jeremy LaMarche is heading up that group now, and he's doing a real great job in really fostering relationships both with the service boards, so literally weekly calls, talking through issues, sharing ideas back and forth, and we're doing that both on the Springfield front as well as the Washington front as well. So it's a much more, I think, coordinated, consolidated effort than we've probably seen in a little while. But we will need support. We need sort of, as they say, boots on the ground, focusing both, we're not in DC on a daily basis, so helping us really understand, in some cases, some things start to move fast, and you need to kind of know the ins and outs of what's going on. So, yes.
So your in-house department is what, 2 people now?
2 people.
Okay, thank you.
It's down 1. In the month before I became the chairman, you all approved, I think, contracts for, I think it's 4 folks to help and assist in Springfield. So that was approved before I came. I will tell you they're very good, and I know Jeremy has a weekly meeting with them, and they're very coordinated. And Mr. Matches is gone now, so we're down one, I guess, historically from where that group is. But no, I think we're well positioned. Any other questions of Leanne? You have anything else for us? Great. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, we will continue to move on our agenda and go down to the approval of contracts and procurements as they appear on the board agenda. There's one contract for today, and that's the ordinance authorizing a contract for printing, storage, and fulfillment services for mobility services department programs. Are there any questions or comments on that particular item? If not, yes, Director Lewis?
Mr. Chairman, there was only one bid on that contract. Is that correct? Is there any particular reason behind that?
That's correct. Michael, did you want to step up and just quickly handle that?
Okay. Yes, we did. We had one bidder on that contract. We sent out the request for bids for to 15 proposers, and we got one back. We did follow up with with many of, I think it was 9 of the proposers, or the folks that did not propose, to ask why they didn't propose. And there was varying reasons why people didn't propose, none of which were issues which would cause us to go back into rebidding the contract. This happens from time to time with some procurements, but yeah, there was one bidder, and it is responsive.
So did we learn anything from the feedback that they gave us that would allow us to have a broader array of bidders in future contracts, just to make sure we're looking as broadly, or that we're taking all the necessary steps to make sure we're not limiting our opportunities?
A lot of the responses that we received had more to do with the firms themselves not being in a place where they wanted to propose at this time. So it wasn't anything that we did in this contract proposal.
Yeah, when we do that, when we reach out to firms that we've sent an RFP to and they don't bid, we always call them up and say, was there something in the proposal itself, in the request for proposal itself, that caused you not to bid? Was it too onerous? Was it, too many insurance requirements, et cetera, et cetera? And in this particular case, there wasn't anything like that that would have caused us to say, you know what, we need to step back and rebid this item. We didn't do something properly. There wasn't anything like that. So, and the bidder was responsive and responsible.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And it's a unique demographic that we serve with this particular contract. Director Todd, got a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was looking at the vendor contract certification form, and I can remember when we initiated this because of some potential embarrassments to the agency if you didn't have some certification of some sort. And that was a number of years ago. But I find that in looking at it, there is no, at least I can't find anything that says, is there any criminal backgrounds by any of the people, officers or people signing the certification? And can we do that? Shouldn't we? I mean, I do recall, I can't remember exactly what it was, a contract that was issued, I don't think necessarily by this agency, where the contractor actually had quite a felony record, and it was very embarrassing to the agency. Now, can we protect ourselves on that somehow?
That's such an interesting question. We've just been talking about that because we had a vendor recently who had some issues that we hadn't known about in advance, and you always have to ask yourself whether or not you're making the process too onerous, too difficult, too many forms, too many questions. How great a burden are you going to place in terms of bidding on your contracts versus the benefit that you're going to get on the other end of it? So we need to talk about whether, as a policy, we think we want to absolutely exclude anyone who has any kind of a criminal background. How much digging do we want to do into that kind of a situation? Do we want to ask about litigation? Do we want to ask about credit history, that kind of thing? We think what we've got is what's appropriate in the industry in terms of the questions that we do ask. But if the board feels that there should be greater burdens placed, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's something that we can talk about and consider. But I mean, 99 times out of 100, you're going to get a no response to those kinds of questions, and it gives the appearance that we are excluding more people than we probably would want to.
But if you get no response, the certificate says, you answered this to the best of your ability without.
No, I'm not saying that we would get no response. I'm saying the response would be negative. It wouldn't be, we wouldn't be getting useful information by asking all of these additional questions. Meanwhile, when people see a 4-page, a 5-page, a 6-page form that they have to fill out, sometimes they just automatically look at it and say, you know what, we're not going to bid. Even though we don't, have a problem with these particular questions, sometimes the process is just too onerous, there's too much paperwork, and you wind up with more situations where you have one bidder where you really aren't getting useful information by asking all of those questions. So it's a balancing act in terms of how much we want to ask. We think that we're on par with what all of our our government peers are doing in terms of the questions that are being asked. So we think we're appropriate for the industry and that we're following best practices.
For that one case that you miss, makes a great headline and can be very embarrassing. So I thought we had that in there originally when we did this certification, but I guess not. Maybe it's worth a relook.
Yeah, it's definitely something we can talk about.
Yes, Director Durante.
I don't think we'd have to broaden it to the degree that you'd say, have you ever been convicted of a crime? I mean, you could go down to misdemeanors and so forth. But the simple question, has any member of your board ever been convicted of a felony? And leave it with just that one sentence. That might be appropriate. Because the media tends to gear in on felons getting this contract or that contract, whether or not they've been they paid their debt to society or not. It's still the question comes up. So
it's something that we definitely want to talk about. I do believe that there is a conversation going on right now amongst certain board members and certain staff people, including myself, about ways that we want to overhaul a lot of our procurement practices. So this would be something that we could discuss.
Please do, and make sure you work in Director Totten, if you would, please.
Will do.
Any other questions or comments? If not, can I have a motion to approve this particular item? Director Hobson moves. Is there a second? Seconded by Director McAllis. Is there leave for the attendance roll call on this? Seeing no objection, leave is granted, and Madam Secretary, record it as our attendance roll call. Thank you very much.
50 ayes and 1 absent.
Thank you. The item is passed. Item 7 is the approval of the consent agenda as it appears on the board agenda. Would the board like either of these two items removed, or can we vote on them together? You want them separately? Is it okay if we do them together? Seeing no objection, we'll do it together. 7A is the ordinance amending the administrative authority, which Ms. Hickey spoke about. It's just updating. There's no changes to the dollar amounts. It's updating our current staffing at the RTA to bring it in line. And then 7B is the ordinance dealing with PACE's revenue bond issuance for their Markham garage. Any questions or comments? If not, can I have a motion to approve these two items? Director Durante moves, seconded by Director Lewis. Again, is there leave for the attendance roll call on these two consent items? Seeing no objection, leave is granted, and Madam Secretary, record it that way, please.
15 ayes and 1 absent.
And it's approved. Any new business to come before the board today? If not, I don't see any. Our next scheduled meeting, as a reminder, is Thursday, February 12th, a little bit before Valentine's Day, Lincoln's birthday, starting with committees at 8:30, followed by the board meeting. I thank everyone for their attendance today, and if there's no further business to come before the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Director Fuentes and seconded by Director Friga. All those signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Okay.
Your mic's on.